onto your butt.
Da-da-da. Oh, hello. Welcome to episode 159 of the Civil War Breakfast Club podcast. As usual, I'm joined by Mary, a woman whose every gift on her Christmas wish list has a bottle deposit. I am merely a burnt-out tree bulb named Darren. Happy cold December, Mary. Happy cold December.
Oh, God.
What's going on? What's going on?
Jeez.
Pittsburgh, you're on the air.
What is this, the Civil War Breakfast Club After Dark?
I don't know what's going on.
Is that
here.
the Civil War Breakfast Club After Dark?
Well, we had that for a title at one point. Someone
I know.
stole it, but it's okay.
I know.
Anyway, so what's going on with you? How are you?
Not much. Happy to be back recording again. It's been a couple, 3 weeks.
It's been a couple weeks. It's been a minute, but we've been busy. It's been a busy time of the year. It's
Yep.
coming to the Christmas season. All the Christmas lights are out. The Christmas tree downtown was lit today.
Yep. I'm sure other people are lit
There's a
downtown
few
right now,
people who are
too.
lit. Absolutely. Good point. And that's why we're doing this early tonight, Mary, so you can join us, but that's good. So I'm going to be a good host today, Mary, because you've probably forgotten already. And I'm going to ask you, of course, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Edmund Fitzgerald Porter by Great Lakes Brewing out of Ohio, and I'm drinking it out of my General Grant mug.
Oh, very good.
And
very
how about
good.
you?
Oh, my God. Thanks, Mary. I am drinking, it's called Love the Drake Lager. It's, of course, for the great Drake May, Patriot quarterback. And it is from Stellwagen Brewery in Marshfield, Massachusetts. And I'm drinking it out of my Abraham Lincoln coffee mug. There you go. I forgot what I was going to say there for a second.
was like, what's
almost said beer mug. Beer mug. So anyway, so we're back at it again, and tonight we are venturing to a location that we haven't really been to in a while, Mary, and that is the extremely understudied Trans-Mississippi Theater, and focus on a battle aimed to try and solidify Confederate control of northern Arkansas to get that foothold into Missouri in late 1862.
Yep, and that is the Battle of Prairie Grove, which was fought 9 months after Pea Ridge, which is and that was a victory for the Union Army. Correct. Sorry, I stumbled over my words there.
You listened to our episode.
Stumbled over my
Congratulations.
words there a little bit. And so after the Union victory at Pea Ridge, the Union Army is divided geographically.
Well, before we get that far, we have to turn back time, Mary.
If I could turn back time.
We have to turn back to an earlier day in 1862. Let's get the boys there, okay? March 8th of 1862, General Samuel Curtis's Army of the Southwest, along with Franz Sigel, perhaps you've heard of him, defeated Earl Van Dorn at the Battle of Pea Ridge, like you said, northeast of Fayetteville, Arkansas, and basically giving up rebel control of the area. Now, with Van Dorn's army across the Mississippi and off to a bang barn far, far away, Curtis wanted to move deeper into Arkansas and prepare to attack Memphis. Now, his plans changed when the commander of the new Department of the Mississippi, one Henry Halleck, will take half of his army away and was forced Curtis to move to Little Rock, Arkansas. Okay, now Curtis' plans changed again after a small battle called the Battle of Whitney's Lane on May 19th of 62 in north central Arkansas, when he decided to give up on his plan to take Little Rock and fall back towards the Ozarks and establish a new supply line in Helena, Arkansas on the Mississippi River. Now, again, September of 1862, Mary, Curtis was assigned to command the Department of Missouri, replacing General John Schofield. We'll talk about him later. And soon after, on October 12th, renamed the Army of Southwest Missouri as the Army of the Frontier, naming Schofield its commander. The Army of the Frontier was a consolidation of commands led by General James Blunt and Schofield, and once divided again into 3 divisions under James Blunt again, James Totten, and Francis Herron. Schofield's army crossed into northern Arkansas from Missouri, right? Now, the rebel army in Arkansas was under the command of Thomas C. Hindman.
And so Hindman, he has a very interesting career for anybody who's studied him. He's not, as well known of a name as some of the other Confederate generals, but Thomas C. Hindman was born on January 28th, 1828 in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's the son of Thomas and Sally Hindman, and his father was a planter and federal agent for Indian affairs in Tennessee. In 1841, his father purchased a new plantation in Ripley, Mississippi, and his family moved there. Thomas would attend local schools, but would eventually go to study at the Classical Institute in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, which was actually a popular school for, would-be Confederate generals to go to. Here he focused on studying Latin and Greek, as well as mathematics and history. And at the school, there was also an emphasis on debate, oratory, and religious instruction. debate and oratory are going to become very prominent in Heineman's life. He graduated as a salutatorian, which
Easy
is
for you to say.
It's a hard word
Obviously,
to say.
you didn't. We're going to salutatorian.
No, I did not. Which is the second highest ranking graduate of the entire graduating class. From an early age, he could be described as being aggressive and militant. Heineman was also short. I've read somewhere.
So far, it's 3 for 3.
What?
Aggressive, militant, and short. This is. You know what? This could be a mission of guilt here, Mary.
Jeez. I've read some sources that say he was 5'4". I've read other sources that say he was just over 5 feet. So a few inches, give or take. Either way, he's a short guy. When he was 17 years old, Heineman joined the 2nd Mississippi Volunteer Infantry since he was determined to take part in the Mexican War. He trained at Vicksburg before being transferred to New Orleans. He saw little action there except for a few small raids, and his regiment was mainly assigned to garrison duty. He ended up being mustered out at the end of the war as lieutenant. After the Mexican War, he became a lawyer, and he also became involved in politics. And at the age of 23 in 1851, he was admitted to the bar. Heineman actively campaigned for Jefferson Davis for the governor of Mississippi, and in 1854, he was elected as Democrat to the Mississippi House of Representatives. A pattern with him is getting into duels with his rivals. Mm-hmm. Besides being short, he's also an angry man. Very, very short fuse.
It's like a Joe Pesci kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly who I would picture. So this is a quote I found about him. With his long, flowing, greased-back hair, Heineman was a pugnacious political scrapper who seemed to one observer to be perpetually anxious to have a duel. He was also described as having a sharp tongue and a hair-trigger temper, and he had a wonderful talent to get into fusses. He was confrontational, uncompromising, and unrelenting, and this is going to get him in trouble throughout his life. In 1856, Heineman moved to Helena, Arkansas, and this is because he feels there are more political opportunities for him there. For a period of time there, he had a law practice. And this is also where, in 1854, he is going to meet what would become his good friend, as well as future Confederate General Patrick Cleburne. And we've discussed Cleburne on many occasions, as all of our listeners know, Irish general for the Confederacy. So they likely met at the Helena Independence Picnic in 1854, which was a day-long community celebration with political speeches by local leaders. So Heineman, in one of the stories of the duel, it takes place after this event. And what happened is Heineman was outside Hadley's Hotel discussing the speeches from the Independence Day. A Whig lawyer named David Badham began taunting him, calling him my sweet-scented individual. Heineman apparently took very much offense to this, grabbed Badham, and ended up physically restrained. At this point, he started throwing insults at him. Badham felt that he had to respond, and so he sent a formal response through his own friend and fellow Whig Mark Alexander. Alexander happened to be Cleburne's legal associate. Mm-hmm. Heineman accepts the challenge, and he chooses Bowie knives as the weapon. Badham and Alexander began to realize this might be a bad idea to have a duel with Heineman, and they try to find a way to call off the fight.
Especially at the picnic.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Especially without loss of honor. Alexander goes to Cleburne and is basically like, hey, could you be a peacemaker and calm this guy down? Cleburne succeeds in doing this. Heineman would continue to get into trouble, though. And he would often have Cleburne come and help bail him out. Now, their friendship has been described as odd because they are complete opposites. Cleburne tended to be shy and kind of quiet. Heineman is in-your-face, angry individual. But one story I found about them is that during the yellow fever epidemic that hit Helena, Arkansas, Heineman, along with Cleburne, prepared meals, carried water, and provided moral support, not just for the victims of yellow fever, but also for all the doctors that were that had to be working during this time. And this is actually going to help contribute to both their reputations as leaders in Helena. On May 24th, 1856, Heineman made a disparaging, shocking remark about one of their former colleagues. So he goes to Cleburne and says he needs him to arm himself. If I was Cleburne, I'd be like, my God, what is going on now? What trouble have you gotten us into? And they have to go to Fadley's Hotel. On their way there, they met the guy, Dorsey Rice, whom Heineman had apparently insulted. Rice demands an apology, and instead, Heineman loses his mind on him, and Rice ends up firing his gun at Heineman with the bullet creasing his right arm and striking him in the chest. Claiborne ends up firing as well in defense, but ends up getting shot in the chest. And the two of them end up exonerated by the grand jury, and they don't press charges against Rice. But the thing that this does is Claiborne nearly dies and will forever suffer from the wound that he received in this duel, if that's what you want to call it, fight they got in because of Hindman. So in 1857, Hindman marries Mary Biscoe, the daughter of a wealthy planter, and they will have 5 children. He will successfully run for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, and he would serve for 2 terms. But he resigned his office in 1860 after Abraham Lincoln was elected president, and he urged Arkansas to secede. While he wanted a seat on the Confederate Congress, he failed to attain to do so, and he thought he had it in because he had campaigned on behalf of Confederate President Jefferson Davis when he was running for governor. And while not being involved in politics for the Civil War, Hindman ends up raising the 2nd Arkansas Infantry to become its colonel. And that's where we'll find him.
Yeah, so Hindman at this point is going to be the commander of the Trans-Mississippi Department, and he ran that region, like your point, Mayor, with an iron fist. Angry fella, right? So much that the locals hated him, and they complained to Confederate President Jefferson Davis, and soon Hindman was replaced by Theophilus Holmes. Now, after taking control of that army of August of 62, Holmes instructed Hindman to try to cobble together an army from the area with the eventual game plan of taking it north into Missouri and securing that border state, for the Confederacy, right? So in the fall of 1862, there are a lot of moving parts in Missouri and Arkansas at this point. One thing's for certain, okay? Union General John Schofield was itching for a fight, and when he got a report that Hindman's men were marching north towards Fayetteville, he thought he was going to finally get his chance. But just like me on a Friday night, Mary, Schofield's left waiting and disappointed because Hindman never came. So what the Hindman rumor did do, though, it made Schofield very scared, right? And caused him to pull most of his army out of northern Arkansas and back into Missouri. This is going to leave just one division under James Blunt, the Kansas division, behind northern Arkansas to manage the DQ, while moving the other 2 divisions under Francis Herron and James Totten, again, back into Missouri.
Yep. Oh, about James Blunt, I do have a little bit of information about him as well. He's born on July 21st, 1826 in Trenton, Maine, to John Blunt and Sally Gilpatrick Blunt. He and Hindman have their mothers have the same name, Sally. He lived and worked on his family farm until the age of 14. Not much is known about Blunt's education, but he may have attended Ellsworth Military Academy in Ellsworth, Maine. When he was 15, he became a sailor on a merchant vessel, and at age 20, he had attained the rank of captain. In 1845, he moved to Columbus, Ohio. Here he enrolled in Starling Medical College, where his uncle, Dr. Rufus Gilpatrick, was an instructor. He graduated in February of 1849 and moved to Madison, Ohio, where he started a medical practice. In 1850, he marries Nancy G. Putnam. So not only did he practice medicine, but he also took on an active role in county politics as a member of the Republican Party, the exact opposite party that Hindman is going to be part of. In 1856, Blunt moves his family to Anderson County, Kansas, where his uncle had moved several years early. It is here that Blunt becomes involved in what is known as Bleeding Kansas. Abolitionist and slavery forces battled to control the territory. In 1857, Blunt joined a force that included abolitionist John Brown. Hint, hint, we are going to be doing an episode about that in a couple weeks. Not that, but about John Brown. Blunt was a key member of the Wyandotte Constitutional Convention that framed the Kansas State Constitution in 1859. When the Civil War began in 1861, Blunt was appointed Lieutenant Colonel of the 3rd Regiment Kansas Volunteer Infantry. They were not accepted into the Union Army, though, until 1862. In April of 1862, Blunt was appointed Brigadier General of Volunteers and given command of the Army of Kansas. It was incorporated into the Army of the Frontier, as you mentioned, as the 1st Division, and Blunt led his division of Cherokee and Kansas volunteers to victory at the Battle of Old Fort Wayne. In December of 1862, Blunt's division was joined by the 2nd Division under Francis G. Harrison. One thing I do want to mention about Blunt and Hindman is that neither of these men have really... They're not West Point graduates. No really formal military training, unless you count, Hindman being involved in the Mexican War. and then Blunt being involved with Bleeding Kansas. So they have a little bit, but they're not these West Point educated guys that we're seeing in other theaters of the Civil War.
They're similar in a way. I mean, Blunt is, he's got a reputation of drinking, womanizing. He's very coarse to the point of intimidation. And like you said, he was extremely anti-slavery, almost to a John Brown level fanaticism.
Yep.
And he was out there as well. He said that no man who parts his hair in the middle should be allowed to lead an army in the field. Little things.
What?
He had these little idiosyncrasies about him. He hated George McClellan, so he's probably related to Stephen Sears. But I mean, he was a very interesting, strange fellow, but he was aggressive and he loved to fight. He hated John Schofield. He hated Henry Halleck. He probably hated the Rosewoods clown. He had a lot of anger in his heart, Mary. That's what he was. But that's who John Blunt was.
So it's basically at Battle of Prairie Grove, it's two very angry individuals fighting against each other.
And that's the whole point of it, is that these folks are I don't want to say cut from the same cloth, but they're similar. They both want to get at it, and they're both waiting for their chance.
Yeah.
Right. But this wasn't really the end of the Union movement, so they're still moving around. And, U.S. Grant's Vicksburg campaign is underway. Halleck is going to feel that really, with any potential threat into Missouri was basically kind of small, that he could send some of Schofield's men to join Grant. Mm-hmm. So he's going to order Schofield and Totten to head to Springfield, Missouri, and then eventually to Mississippi. Now, Totten was especially upset at this move, but things are going to change again. General Schofield gets sick. He gets really sick.
Yep.
And he's bedridden like you on a Saturday morning after the mine, right? So he had to relinquish control of those two Missouri divisions to General James Totten, who was now in charge of the men that were supposed to be leaving to go join Grant. So on November 4th, 1862, Totten is preparing to move when he gets a message now from General Blunt, who is still in northern Arkansas, with two valuable pieces of information. First, James Blunt says he's finished writing You're Beautiful and the song is ready to record. And two, second and most important, he said his scouts report that Hindman's Rebs are on the move, right? So Hindman, he also got wind that the Union forces were now thin in northern Arkansas. So he realized to, quote, maybe an opportunity here,
yep.
right? So to at worst maybe move north into the town of Cane Hill in northern Arkansas and do some foraging, do some supply run, right?
Yep.
So he's going to send 2,000 cavalry under General John S. Marmaduke to go to Cane Hill, which is about 2 miles southwest of Fayetteville, and gather supplies and scout the strength of the Federals, for a preparation of maybe possibly a rebel invasion into Missouri. Marmaduke, by the way, Mary, was going to become the 25th governor of Missouri in 1885.
That is a righteous name, by the way, Marmaduke.
He's going to survive this. I mean, Marmaduke's moving to Cane Hill is going to set off a chain of events that is going to affect the entire Trans-Mississippi theater, okay? Knowing that Marmaduke's 2,000 men are moving north, General Samuel Curtis is going to tell Halleck that he is not sending those troops to Grant, those two divisions to Vicksburg, and instead, he will keep them together in Springfield, Missouri to protect the region, okay? Now, when Marmaduke finished foraging and he realized how exposed and alone he was, he returned south of the Arkansas River to Hindman at its headquarters at the town of Fort Smith, which is about 60 miles south of Fayetteville. Now, Marmaduke's success foraging, it gave Hindman the thought that with two of the three Union divisions moving out of the area, he heard they were going to Vicksburg, and only one in his way, this is Blunt, this could possibly be the perfect time to try and recruit and grow his army to finally give them a chance to head north and invade Missouri. Mm-hmm. So for this venture, Hindman will create, basically out of Scotch tape, an army called the Trans-Mississippi Army, made up of 17,000 men in 4 divisions, 2 infantry, 1 cavalry, and 1 combination of both. I mean, it's officially a quotation fingers army, but it's loosely put together with any men he can get his hands on. Also with any weapons he can get. Basically, these guys have smooth bores and shotguns and bad artillery pieces.
Wow.
So it ain't got the good stuff.
This just seems like a very Thomas Hindman thing to do.
It kind of is. I mean, he fought with a Bowie knife, right?
Yeah.
So of course it is. He wants to go into Missouri, and now with this army, he thinks he's going to get ready to move. So he's going to prepare them. But like General Curtis, Hindman's plans are also going to be altered by Vicksburg. Jefferson Davis is going to also begin to fear Grant's maneuvers that are targeting Vicksburg. And he's going to message General Theophilus Holmes to send the whole army to Mississippi now to support James Pemberton to Vicksburg. Vicksburg at this point is like a big planet with an orbit pulling everything near it closer together.
Yep.
And it's affecting both the Union and the Confederate armies in Arkansas and Missouri. When Holmes gets this message from Davis, he pulls out his nope card and he tells Davis, no, I'm not sending troops. I'm keeping them right where they are. So good for Theophilus, right? November 23rd, 1862, Thomas Hindman is going to order his men to get a step-in towards Cane Hill, where they had earlier had on Marmaduke's 2,700-man cavalry, again to return there, and he's going to send the supply wagons. Now, when Marmaduke got back to Cane Hill, which again is about 50 miles south of the Missouri border, he's going to get further intelligence that James Blunt's Union, his Kansas division, they're still by themselves. They're weak, they're vulnerable, and they've only got about 3,000 guys. The other two divisions, those Missouri divisions, are nowhere to be found. So Marmaduke is going to beg Hindman to hurry up, get here as fast as you can so we can destroy Blunt. He's right nearby Newtonia, Missouri, right across the border into Arkansas. This is our big chance. So Marmaduke's is told Hindman that Blunt's small division, they're going to be a mere speed bump on the way to Missouri if they hurried. The clock is ticking. They ain't got time. They ain't got it, right?
In a way, it sounds like a little bit like the Battle of Monocacy. Like they're going to assume they're going to hit a speed bump. Which, I mean, they do at Monocacy, obviously, but
I mean, Hindman, don't forget who he is. He's aggressive. He wants to fight. He's getting these messages from Marmaduke about Blunt. He could barely get his pants on, so excited that he wanted to move so fast.
Why did he have his pants off?
Well, who knows? He wants to get his men moving towards Cane Hill, but the problem is his army is still kind of messed up. He needs 2 to 3 days to get his army ready to move still. He told Marmaduke to stay at Cane Hill, but avoid any contact with the Federals until he arrives. Marmaduke is like, okay, sounds good to me. He assured Hindman he's in no danger whatsoever. He says to Hindman, quote, all is quiet here. Now, the next day is the 24th. Now, General Blunt, he's going to find out that Marmaduke is again back at Cane Hill. So just imagine they're going back and forth, back and forth. So now Blunt realizes there's a 2,700-man cavalry group just not far away. Blunt, by then, going back to his personality, is sick of sitting on his ass. He's itching for a fight. He knows Marmaduke is near. He began to put an attack plan of his own together to move his Kansas division now south and attack Marmaduke's cavalry, who was also by themselves and also small.
Yeah.
So it's like a mirror image of each other, what's going on at this point. Blunt's going to message his boss, General Curtis, of his plan, and he's going to write, quote, I shall move on Marmaduke tomorrow morning. I hope to destroy him before he is reinforced by Hindman. So Curtis now, he's also now fearing an attack from Hindman. Because don't forget, he pulled those divisions back, right? He's going to order those 2 Missouri divisions under Generals Francis Herron and Daniel Houston Jr. to move back towards Blunt in Arkansas to support him. This is going to give, when they get together, this is going to give the Federals just over 9,000 men to hold off any rebel attack.
Yeah.
So on the 27th, Blunt, again, he's still by himself. He's going to move his army out to strike Marmaduke. He'll get to the next day, just as Marmaduke was planning a separate attack on Elkhorn Tavern in Garfield, Arkansas, near the site of Pea Ridge Battlefield from earlier.
I was going to say, I recognize the name of Elkhorn Tavern.
And yes, Marmaduke going to visit Garfield sounds like a comic. I realize
it
that.
Does.
It just
it
does.
Actually, okay, Marmaduke the comic, is he a dog?
I don't know. He's a wolf or something. I don't know.
I thought he was a Great Dane.
You know what? Maybe. I don't know. I was too busy drinking in high school and reading comic strips. But I think he is a dog, to your point. Okay?
I think he's a Great Dane.
I don't know if he's great, but he's a Dane. Anyway, so Blunt's arrival is going to stun Marmaduke because he had no idea that he was coming because Blunt moved his men 40 miles in just 2 days. The 9-hour battle that occurred, which will be known as the Battle of Cane Hill, chased Marmaduke's smaller cavalry force away, and Blunt kept chasing him all the way until night fell, which allowed Marmaduke to escape, which pissed off Blunt tremendously. I mean, he had his bloodlust going. He wanted to win. So Hyman now, he's going to find out about this Battle of Cane Hill, and he's going to be stunned, but he's also invigorated. He's psyched because, like Blunt, Hyman wants to fight, and he's sick of sitting around. Despite Marmaduke getting beaten, driven back, Hyman saw this as a golden opportunity. Because now, instead of having to march all this extra time to get his army together and march, now Blunt's army's closer to him and further away from any potential help that he can get as far as reinforcements from Missouri. So see what's going on here?
Yep.
He somehow was able to pull Blunt to him without even trying.
Yep.
So for Hyman, Blunt's army was smaller than his and much closer and still by himself. So have you ever shot fish in a barrel? Is that a thing in Canada still? Is that what you did like on Friday night?
Yeah, that's exactly what we did on Friday night.
Like ice fishing?
Yeah,
you know?
ice fishing.
Well, there's that phrase, shooting fish in a barrel, right?
Yeah.
To Hyman, this is what he saw in front of him. A chance to smash Blunt and open the door to waltz into Missouri. I mean, you couldn't even have drawn this up better in his mind. So November 30th, Hyman makes formal plans to attack Blunt, and he's going to message his boss, Theophilus Holmes, of his plan to attack him within 3 days. That's what he's going to say. Do you remember we talked about this a lot, Mary? Those 3 things that always screw up battle plans. Remember what they are?
Yeah, they are weather,
Yep.
communication,
Yes,
and
there's a big word. Terrain.
Terrain.
Okay.
Yep.
Terrain, communication, and weather. On December 3rd, the day Hyman's army is planning to move, guess what happens?
There is bad weather. There is a storm.
Freezing friggin' rain. The worst weather of all kind. As far as I'm concerned, there is no worse weather than freezing rain.
No, freezing rain sucks.
Freezing rain is going to hit on December 3rd, and it's going to make everything really screw up for Hyman's march. Now, again, Blunt, he's aggressive, but he also isn't stupid, and he's beginning to smell a rat here because he knows that he's vulnerable, and that Hyman is likely to attack him for the same reason that he wants to attack Hyman.
Yeah.
The army's separated. There's no reinforcements. They're not very big. So Blunt's going to message General Francis Herron, who commanded the 3rd Division, to come to Arkansas and support him. Now, this is unbeknownst to Hyman, of course, at this point. There's a problem, Mary. There's always a problem, right?
Always a problem.
The problem was Herron was 100 miles away in Missouri. He needed to cross a mountain range called the Boston Mountains, which is certainly going to slow his 4,000 men down. This Boston Mountains, the terrain was tough, the weather was bad, and since it was called Boston Mountains, probably a Dunkin's in every street corner where I slowed the men down. I can only imagine, right? It's probably what it cost him the battle, actually, if you think about it. But Herron had his men double quick to get through these mountains to get to Blunt ASAFP.
You know what
right?
else might have slowed them down is the traffic if it's from Boston.
Yeah, there's that too. It's about like rush hour, freaking Star Drive, But on December 4th, Blunt could do nothing but wait and fortify his position as he waited for Hyman's inevitable attack that he knew was probably coming the next morning. But he messaged General Curtis and said, listen, I'm going to hold my position. I'm going to hold as long as I can. I don't plan on running. The usual stuff, right? The next morning on the 5th, this freezing rain was really screwing up Hyman's plans as the roads were a complete quagmire. Giggity.
Yeah.
So due to the weather and the muddy roads, he decides to hold off from his attack until Sunday, December 7th. All the while, Herron is getting closer and closer without Hyman's knowledge. So Hyman doesn't realize that his clock is running out. He's waiting out the weather. He thinks he has all the time in the world to do it. He's going to go on the 7th. So the next morning, Hyman's troops report they're going to start encountering federal cavalry. And they're going to learn now at this point that Herron's 2nd Division is on its way.
Is this the morning of December the 7th?
Right. Yep. So he knows they're coming now. And he's surprised. He has that pucker effect moment because he thought his opportunity to destroy Blunt is slipping through his fingers. But he thinks he can still attack Blunt before Herron arrives. So by the time he's ready, darkness fell and he realized, actually this is the 6th, not the 7th.
Oh, the 6th? Okay.
Darkness fell and he realized the weather has cost him dearly. Herron's troops are going to arrive on the field the next morning on December 7th after marching 110 miles in just 4 days. That is Howard level speed.
That is.
Through these Boston mountains in a sleet storm. That's 30 miles a day, uphill both ways, as my mother used to say, right? But they're coming. Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Barnes, he's of the 20th Iowa. He's going to write of Herron's march, quote, "It has to be the greatest march made by any troops during the War of the Rebellion." I mean, you just imagine. I mean, we've talked a lot about A.P. Hill's march from Harper's Ferry.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of Stonewall
I was going to
stuff.
say everybody talks about like A.P. Hill or Stonewall, but nobody talks about this. And again, this is kind of like that, you know, you look at the Eastern Theater and that's what everybody talks about. And then the Western Theater, there's, you know, some stuff, but then now we're in the Trans-Mississippi and there's stuff happening that doesn't get talked about.
It doesn't. I mean, you know, but Blunt got his reinforcements in the nick of time, right before Hindman was set to attack. So for Hindman, his entire battle plan fizzled before his eyes, and he knew he couldn't attack Blunt's and Herron's combined force. So he's going to take Offspring's advice and try to keep them separated, right? That's what he wants. That's what he wants to do. Blunt, it's a great song though. Blunt and Herron were still a few miles apart, and Hindman wanted to isolate Blunt at Cane Hill and then attack Herron as he approached, figuring if he can beat Herron while he's still on his march, he could then fall back and deal with Blunt. So basically what he's trying to do, Hindman is kind of like using his left hand to hold Blunt's head down, and using his right hand to swing at Herron. That's kind of what he's doing, right? Hindman pulled out a map, and he located what he thought was an ideal place to get between Blunt and Herron at an intersection of roads in the woods just southwest of Fayetteville near a hill called Prairie Grove. It seemed like a perfect location to attack. Herron would have to cross the nearby Illinois River, and when they were doing, they'd be vulnerable to attack. So on dawn of Sunday, December 7th, Hindman is going to quietly march to Prairie Grove, moving to the east of Blunt's division, who were unaware they were moving on their right towards Herron. This is kind of like a big version of Spring Hill, with Schofield and with Hood. So Hindman is basically, or what he thinks anyway, that he was going to sneak around to the right and get between them, and that's what his plan is. John Marmaduke's 2,700-man cavalry was in the lead and drove back any federal pickets they ran into with ease. Marmaduke is going to arrive at Prairie Grove just as that first column of Herron's infantry arrives, and he was surprised to run into them head-on at the Fayetteville Road. I mean, they weren't expecting to see them. The Rebs fell back and set up a defensive position on top of a hill at the hill at Prairie Grove, right as Herron's men chased them, and they formed their line on the banks of the Illinois River. So you can just imagine, they're crossing the river, just setting up their lines. The third and final Union division was a 2,100 men. The second division, commanded by Daniel Houston Jr., was still several miles behind Herron. So for the moment, Herron's 3,900 men were by themselves, potentially facing Hindman's 12,000-man army. So this is not going to end well on paper, right?
No.
Hindman had the perfect opportunity, just as he wanted, to attack and destroy Herron, push them all the way back into Houston's division, who was still a few miles northeast of Fayetteville. So what does Hindman do? He ballsed out. Just like Josh Allen in January or Joseph Hooker at Chancellorsville, Thomas Hindman lost confidence in Thomas Hindman. At around 10 o'clock in the morning on the 7th, Hindman got scared again because he wasn't sure of Herron's numbers. And he thought that, hey, if I get bogged down here, Blunt's going to advance up my savannah from behind and destroy me. I'm going to be stuck in the middle, be a pincer. So again, he's having this pucker effect moment again now. And he just pees down his leg. Hindman decides to send his largest division, 6,000 men, this third division, which is half of his army, under a guy named Daniel Frost, to Cane Hill, and only sent his second division, 3,200 men under Francis Shoup, with Marmaduke's 2,700 cavalry, to attack Herron at Prairie Grove. So instead of 12,000 men all at one time, he's only sending just under 6,000, of which half are cavalry, to face Herron's 3,900 federal infantry.
And doesn't at some point he scold Shoup for not attacking Herron?
Well, we're going to get to that. The command and control is all screwed up, and not to jump ahead, but the division commanders just aren't even there. All the decisions on the battlefield on the Confederate side are all made by brigadiers or below or regimental colonels or lieutenant colonels. The division commanders are just not there. So, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. Yeah. Hindman's men had to set up at Prairie Grove when Herron pushed forward over the Illinois River to attack the troops on that hill in what will officially begin the Battle of Prairie Grove. The Rebs had 2 strikes on them from the beginning with this battle. First, remember, these men, for the most part, they had smoothbores and shotguns.
Yeah, so weapons are not accurate.
Range ain't good.
Yep. Accuracy
artillery is not that good either. The other issue is what I just talked about, command and control. And again, for whatever reason, the Confederate division commanders and the leadership was completely absent, and all battlefield divisions were made by subordinate brigade by brigade levels.
This sounds kind of like that's
you know what it sounds like? It sounds like the wheat field at Gettysburg on the Union side.
It does, but I was also going to say it sounds a bit like Pea Ridge, because wasn't it at Pea Ridge where like all these commanders fell within 10 minutes of each other, and then like it fell?
Well, that's one thing if you get wounded. Yeah. These guys just weren't there.
I know, but still, it's like kind of like it seems like trans-Mississippi battles have this level of chaos and lack of communication and command that, I mean, it happens in the Eastern and Western theaters too, but in the trans-Mississippi, it's even more prominent, I think.
The commander of Hyman's 2nd Division, you just mentioned Francis Shoup, he got to Prairie Grove and he did not attack. He decided to hold his men back for whatever reason, only known but to him and Miss Cleo. No one knows why. But he wrote after the battle, quote, "At first glance, I was struck by the natural strength of the position and its adaptability to the purpose of defense." So he's thinking, he's like Evander Law in Big Round Top. I got a good place. I'm just going to set up defense. The hell with this. But he's supposed to be attacking. Instead of the division commander, Daniel Frost, Hindman is going to personally deploy those 6,000 men, his 3rd Division, back at Cane Hill. Then he's going to ride forward to Prairie Grove to check on Shoup. And when he arrived, Shoup was sitting on top of the hill.
Was he singing Shoup, Shoup Bedu, Shoup Bedu?
He might have enjoyed a bowl of rice-a-roni. Who knows what he was doing? But he was not attacking. So now this is more Federal infantry under Herron are approaching, which meant the rebel offensive that he wants, that he's been dying to do, is going to be canceled. And now instead, Hindman is going to have Shoup and Marmaduke's men stay where they are and play defense now to hold Prairie Grove. So you see how the plans all change with this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's on the fly it changes. So now, slowly approaching was that 3rd Division, now the 2,100 men from Daniel Houston Jr. This is the 2nd Division of the Federal Army. Houston was a Mena from Banga, right?
Wow.
But he commanded troops from Iowa, Indiana, and Missouri. And his men now are just starting to arrive. They were a little bit behind Herron. Now they're arriving to support Herron. The Union is going to be smart, though. They're going to have the benefit of over 20 artillery pieces. They're going to line them up, which is going to make Hindman's life miserable throughout this day. Many of the rebel troops would say after the battle, the Federal artillery assault at Prairie Grove was the worst they ever saw in the entire war.
Wow.
Herron's he first decided to unleash his artillery with the hopes of softening up the rebel entrenchments on the hill before sending in his infantry. I mean, that's pretty common.
Yep.
When the time came, he's going to order the 20th Wisconsin under Major Henry Starr, the 19th Iowa under Samuel McFarland, and Lieutenant Colonel John McNulta's 94th Illinois. This is 1,500 guys. Herron feels that those 1,500 should be plenty because he thought the rebel troops on the hill were only cavalry under Marmaduke. So at 11:30 in the morning, Herron's going to send those 3 regiments across an open field called Borders Wheatfield towards Prairie Grove, where they're going to immediately come under rebel fire from the hill. Now, the 19th Iowa and the 20th Wisconsin, they're going to charge the rebel cannon on the lower slope of the hill, and they captured it amazingly without losing one man.
Wow.
But they're on top of the hill. Woohoo! They're celebrating because they captured the guns. They thought that was the only threat. But as they started to celebrate, they began to climb up the hill further. Where waiting for them was the 1st Brigade of Arkansans, right?
Yeah, Arkansans.
Arkansans.
Yep, Arkansans.
1,500 men commanded by James Fagan from Shoup's 2nd Division. So now they're in for it.
So this is their counterattack.
Well, the terrain, that comes in a bit. The terrain was such with the Federal troops coming up the hill they couldn't see Fagan's Confederates and vice versa. The Rebs were eventually going to see them, and when they did, Fagan's men are going to open up a volley right into their faces. The 20th Wisconsin on the federal right attacked with 430 men, and they went straight to the 34th Arkansas, commanded by William Brooks's 400 men with 300 more from Alex Hawthorne's Arkansans. So on the Union left now, 500 Iowans from the 19th Iowa, this is Sam McFarland's guys, they're going to push towards a home called the Borden House. But on their way, they're going to run right in between two rebel regiments, 700 guys from the 22nd and 29th Arkansas. You cannot pick a worse place to walk into.
No.
They walked into a bee's nest, right? The 19th will take a beatdown. And during the battle, their commander, Lieutenant Colonel McFarland, a former U.S. congressman from Iowa, will be shot in the chest. He'll be killed instantly. Private William Clayton, the 19th Iowa, wrote of the battle at the Borden House, quote, "It was a perfect slaughter pen into which we were led." The 19th Iowa lost 41% of their strength. On the other side, the 20th Wisconsin was also getting beaten up and punished. Mm-hmm. Those both regiments turned, see you later. They took off. They ran like hell.
I don't blame them.
No. But here's the thing. Seeing the Federals running, the Arkansans, without orders, started running after them. Just chasing them. Their commander, James Fagan, is yelling, "Stop, stop, get back in your position. Don't chase, don't chase." And they kept going. This is Kevin Bacon. All was well. That's what this was, right? When the Arkansas regiments got close to the Union line, what happens? That Federal artillery is going to open up with canister and is going to shred the rebel lines as they approach, which caused them again to run back up the hill.
So they went the way of Garnett.
They certainly did. Back and forth and back and forth, right? General Herron, seeing all this unfold in front of him, he sees his regiments are beaten up now. He knew that it's going to be up to that 2nd Division under Colonel Daniel Houston Jr., his 1,200 men, to go to the bullpen now, and it's going to be up for them now to fight this one. So Houston's men were made up of Colonel John Clark's 26th Indiana, Lieutenant Colonel John Black's 37th Illinois, and Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Leake's 20th Iowa. And they knew that they have to make this attack basically by themselves because Herron's guys are beaten up. Houston is going to place a 26th Indiana up front along with the 37th Illinois, and he's going to keep his 20th Iowa in reserve. And he's going to order them forward as they're stepping over the dead and dying of Herron's division across his field.
I was reading about that. It's just, ugh.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
Clark's 26th Indiana, they're going to attack the far right of the rebel line, which was held by 1,475 Missouri cavalry troops under Colonel Joseph Shelby. He's a Lexington, Kentucky native who commanded one of Marmaduke's one of his brigades. Now, Shelby attacked the advancing Indiana men, which forced them to run like hell. This whole thing, it's like a tennis match, back and forth, back and forth. Now, usually Indiana men who run that fast from a battle play for the Indianapolis Colts, right? But I digress. On the Union right, Lieutenant Colonel John Black of the 37th Illinois, he's a Mississippian who moved to Illinois to fight for the Union. He moves forward in that same path the 19th Iowa did just 30 minutes before, and also fought the 29th and 22nd Arkansas, along with those Hawthorne Arkansans. Same ones. Black's troops are going to reach the Borden Orchard, where they traded volleys back and forth with those Arkansas regiments. This fight is going to devolve into close to hand-to-hand combat right in each other's faces, but eventually the numbers tell the story here, and the 37th Illinois is going to fall back. Lieutenant Black, who already had a wounded right arm, he got shot in the left arm now.
Oh, no.
But he stayed with his men in front of the Borden House, shouting orders without being able to use either arm. Eventually, his men fell back, and Black ordered a retreat. For his efforts, John Black will be awarded the Medal of Honor. 31 years later, at age 54, Black was the only Medal of Honor awarded at the Battle of Prairie Grove.
Wow.
There you go. Black wrote of the confusion of the battle, quote, "Our revolving rifles kept playing off one after the other as they fell one after the other. We fled back to the cover of the wooded hill." So his advance now has failed. So now Houston's division suffered that same fate as Herron's, as Fagan's Rebs drove them back, and just like before, you know what they did?
They ran.
Then they did. What do the Confederates do?
Run after them
They
again.
chased them again.
Because that's always a good idea.
Counterattacked again, which resulted in, guess what happened?
The Confederates getting repulsed.
They ran into that Federal artillery again, and they got smashed again.
Always a good idea.
Fagan's men fell back once again. No Confederate division commander was present to lead them. This is Fagan, the brigade commander, making these decisions.
Where is everybody?
Who knows? Who knows where they were?
At the DQ?
Shoup, Marmaduke, and Frost were MIA during these assaults. You know, that's where they were. So it all fell back to subordinates. So Fagan's trying to keep his men under control, and they keep running forward. They keep getting slaughtered. Command fell to those brigades and regimental commanders, like we said, who were left to conduct the movements of the men by themselves. And like I said before, when you think of these battles, these confusion things, the one that comes to mind, I said a little while ago, is the Union at the wheat field here at Gettysburg.
Oh, yeah.
Just where no one knows who's in control, what's going on.
Yep.
It's a big melee. That's what this was. Shelby, those Missouri cavalry troops under Marmaduke's men, they're going to try to knock out that Federal artillery. Because it's been pounding them all day. Mm-hmm. But they can't get close enough. They keep getting cut up as well. At this moment, the Confederates held Prairie Grove, but they couldn't get any success trying to attack the Federal troops going on now for 3 hours. This has been going back and forth and back and forth. So late in the afternoon, between 3, 4 o'clock or so, the Battle of Prairie Grove continues to be basically one of charges and countercharges, and was quickly realized by Hindman that he was blowing this huge opportunity. I mean, you could just, it's like having a big lead in a football game and you're watching it go and disappear because it's just being mismanaged.
Well, and he's got no reinforcements either.
No, well, he's going to have some coming, but not at this very moment.
Yeah.
This battle was a stalemate, but really neither side can gain much of an advantage, especially for the Federals, you know, whose hope was also fading.
Yep.
Right? It was this moment when the Union Army gets lucky. Mm-hmm. Remember earlier we were talking before how Hindman wanted to put his head down on Blunt and attack Herron. Well, at this moment, Blunt is going to realize what's going on, and he's going to leave Cane Hill, and he's going to start to approach. When the battle looked like it was going to get stayed bogged down, James Blunt's Kansas Division, his 3,110 men, they unexpectedly arrived from Cane Hill, and they were looking for a fight. So earlier in the day, Blunt's cavalry had spotted Hindman's rebels moving past them on the right towards Prairie Grove, and they figured out the Confederates' plan. So Hindman did not sneak by Blunt like he thought he did. He was spotted, and then Blunt realized what's probably going to be happening. So he makes his own decision without talking to Curtis that he has to go and he has to go try to find with this battle. He figures he's going after Herron.
Yep.
So that's what he's going to do. He's going to figure out he's probably going towards the Prairie Grove area. So Blunt decides to move out of Cane Hill, again on his own orders, and proceed towards Fayetteville, hoping he'll bump into those two Missouri divisions because he knew that they were in the crosshairs. He was able to sneak past Frost's 6,000-men Confederate division, who had been positioned to keep them there and hold them there. But Hindman's thinking he snuck by Blunt. Turns out Blunt snuck by Hindman.
Yep.
So Blunt was able to avoid them by going west of Prairie Grove around Ray's Mill, and then he just followed the sounds of the guns for the battle. That's what he did. So Blunt's 3,100 men, they're going to arrive at around 3:30, 3:45, somewhere like that. And after a 5-hour march to reinforce the Missouri divisions, who ironically came from Missouri to bail out Blunt's men from disaster.
Yep.
Now here's Blunt bailing out Herron and Hughes's men from disaster. It's a crazy world, Mary. Herron's men saw Blunt's Kansas division arriving, and all the men started cheering.
Yep.
Woohoo! I mean, it's like the cavalry's arrived, right?
Yep.
They came down from the west through the Crawford's Prairie, and they formed a battle line at a road called near the Viney Grove Road. Now, for the first time now, the Army of the Frontier was together, and their remaining 8,000 or so men were much closer now to about the 11,000 men of Hindman. They were still less, but they were closer. Yep. Now, remember, how these numbers played out at the beginning? Hindman had 12,000. Blunt had 3,000. Or whatever's going to have.
Yeah.
I mean, Herron's going to have 3,000.
Yeah.
This should have been, like I said, shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
But because of a whole bunch of different command and control issues, now it's almost even. The last thing Hindman wanted was an even battle because he had every advantage up to this point.
Yep.
basically what's going to happen at this point is Blunt's going to set up his artillery and immediately start firing on the rebels who've been dealing with artillery all day. But then he quickly realized, too, that he needed the infantry to clear it out.
Yeah.
Artillery wasn't going to do it alone. So just after 4 p.m., Blunt will order his 2nd Brigade under Colonel William Weir forward. Now, this is 800 men made up of the 10th and 13th Kansas, along with 40 Native Americans from the 3rd Indian Home Guard, right? Earlier in the war, by the way, this William Weir.
Yep.
William Weir was the legal counsel for the Wyandotte Reservation in Kansas before being chosen to command the 4th Kansas Volunteers by Blunt to lead the Indian expedition into modern-day Oklahoma to drive off the pro-Confederate Cherokees, right? He was a drunk, and it got so bad, his men led a mutiny to get rid of him.
Wow.
No word if he ever have a town council. Who knows, right? But later in the war, he eventually did lose his command for drunkenness. It was sent to a desk job in St. Louis before being kicked out of the army for stealing money from the Alton prison in Illinois, leading to his ouster from the army in August of 1964.
Was he stealing money to buy booze?
Who knows? But he ends up being a disaster. But going back to Prairie Grove, he had Blunt's 3rd Brigade under William Cloud, and together they ran into a rebel assault by Shoup's 2nd Brigade, led by Colonel Danebridge McCrae, 1,600 Arkansans. And again, he will charge with his 30th Arkansas on the left-hand side now, okay? Followed by the 28th and 32nd, and finally the 26th Arkansas. And they're going to hit that 1st Home Guard in the remnants of Houston's 20th Iowa, which caused another Federal retreat. So this time, it's the Confederates who initiate it, and they push forward. But the Feds are going to basically fall back to Blunt's line, where another Confederate counterattack is going to get pounded by the artillery. I mean, it goes back and forth with the guns. But Blunt, he had his dander up, as they say. And he basically, as they say, he basically positioned his 10th Kansas with the 2nd Kansas Battery and the 11th Kansas to kind of slowly move forward through Prairie Grove. What Blunt wanted to do was drive Hyman off that hill, and he picked his most veteran troops to do it. Now, here is when the Confederates get lucky. They get perfectly timed reinforcements of their own under Colonel Mosby Parsons, 33,000 men.
His name was Mosby?
His name was Mosby. There he is. 3,000 men of the 1st Brigade from Daniel Frost's division arriving near Cane Hill. So now this is the Confederates from Cane Hill arriving now. So the whole band's getting together now.
Yep.
Blunt and Confederate Parsons' men's lines met right at the base of the hill at Prairie Grove, and they just started blasting away at each other. Bang, 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 from close range. It was sort of like a big grand finale of the battle, like at the end of the fireworks.
Yeah.
Blunt said of this close-range fight, quote, "The fight raged furiously and without a moment's cessation along our entire front." Basically, Blunt was just sick of dealing with this, and the Confederates, they were just swinging like
they just want it over with, I think, at this point.
with everything they had at this point, the big grand finale. Dusk was starting to fall. Mosby Parsons' men got desperate, and they charged forward with that rebel yell, screaming right at Blunt's line. But Parsons' men caused Blunt to retreat, is what they did. But they didn't stop again until they reached that Federal artillery line, where again they got mowed down by the Union guns. These Confederates, every time they charged, the guns were there waiting for them. So by 5 p.m., it's almost dark now, and it's that last call for Hyman to try to win it and win the battle. So Parsons is going to reform his line, and he's going to have his men go full banana, right at Blunt's men. Everything just go. But with darkness falling and the Federal artillery still there imposing, every assault Parsons tried was pushed back. An Indiana soldier wrote of it, quote, "The Indiana gunners sent grape and shell at the rebels and literally mowed them down." Now Parsons, he had no choice but to stagger back up to the hill, again as darkness has fallen. And this is going to cause basically the end of the Battle of Prairie Grove. And this is how it's going to end. But real quick on Parsons, sidebar, I guess you want to call it. Parsons could not bear to return to Missouri after the war. Like a lot of bitter Confederates, he chose to move to Mexico. August of 1965, right after the battle ended, the war ended, Parsons is going to be murdered by Mexican banditos. and he's buried in an unknown mass grave along with a former Confederate Congressman, Aaron Conroe.
Wow.
Parsons' son, who I think was named Carney, if I think about it, like Phil Carney, spelled the same way.
Wow.
He sues the Mexican government for killing his father and his friend.
Oh my God.
The Mexican government awards Carney Parsons $50,000 worth of gold for this, which is worth $1 million in today's money.
Wow.
It's kind of one of those stories afterwards. Kind of like,
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about Mexico when we discuss Hindman post-Civil War.
Oh, yeah. But anyways, both sides were basically pretty beaten up and tired, after 7 full hours of really nonstop combat. I mean, there was no lulls here. It was back and forward and back and forward. But Hindman, he missed his chance to defeat the Federals, and he gave him, which basically would have been an easy pass into Missouri. But ultimately, his own cautiousness and lack of command and control doomed him, despite having a sizable advantage in manpower on the high ground.
Yep.
Hindman allowing his brigade commanders to determine their movements, whether by his own lack of self-confidence or whatever reasons, it destroyed any chance they had of destroying the Federals. On the other end, the 3 Union Division commanders, Francis Herron, Daniel Houston, and James Blunt, they all handled their men very, very well. But it was Blunt's perfectly timed arrival that really helped tilt the battle away from the Confederates. So, in the end, the casualties were about even, actually.
Yeah, and it's really, the fighting's considered to be inconclusive, but because Hindman is going to leave, this is going to give the Union a strategic victory. And this is why Arkansas is going to fall back under Union control, correct? After this battle?
Sort of, yeah. Sort of. So basically, the problem with this is Hindman needed the win.
Yep.
And when it became nut-cutting time, he just choked. He just did. Like you said, the battle was basically a draw. But his plan to drive the Union troops out of North Arkansas was basically over.
Yeah.
Now, he had no choice but to retreat and fall back to Van Buren, Arkansas. This is the same spot where they started.
Yeah.
Many of Hindman's men were pissed at him for how he handled the army, and he wrote a very honest response to his boss, Theophilus Holmes. And I'll give him credit for this because he's very honest. He wrote, and I quote, "I'm very proud of my troops, but not satisfied with myself. I find I did not press the enemy as vigorously as I thought. The tremendous responsibility made me timid." That's what he wrote to his boss. Mm-hmm. The next day, on December 8th, Blunt learns that Hindman has left the dance floor.
Yep.
But before he moves out, Hindman actually did something which is very, very smart and is very unusual in Civil War battles. He reaches out to Blunt to formally request a truce of the battle, which Blunt agrees to. Hindman probably did this because he was afraid of getting chased down, but for whatever reason, at 9 o'clock in the morning on the 8th, Blunt, Hindman, Marmaduke, and Herron met at a home of a local man named Hugh Rogers, and they agreed on this truce. The last thing they negotiated, I love this part of the story. The last thing they negotiated was the actual name of the battle they just fought.
Wow.
Both sides agreed to call it the Battle of Prairie Grove. It is the only time in the entire Civil War that both sides set and met to decide on what to call the battle.
So this is one of those battles that does not have, it's not like Antietam, Sharpsburg.
They got together and said, "What do you guys want to call it?" And they all agreed to call it the Battle of
That
Prairie
is
Grove.
a really amazing part of the story.
Yeah. It's just so unusual. But Hindman's going to leave for Van Buren soon after they were arrested, and they crossed the Arkansas River to recover his battered army. Blunt and his army went back to Fayetteville, where he got an unwelcome Christmas gift from his boss, General Curtis, on December 23rd.
Schofield's coming back.
You got it. He finds out that Schofield, who he hates,
is coming back.
Good news, he's fully recovered from his illness, and he's going to assume control again of the Army of the Frontier. Now, again, Blunt hated Schofield, but he wanted to have a little more success for himself before Schofield arrived. So knowing he had a few days to go till Schofield physically returned, Blunt wanted to take his men to Van Buren to take a shot at Hindman again, hoping to get that complete victory before the boss came. But Blunt, when he got there 5 days later down at Van Buren, he found that Hindman had vacated the dance floor and snuck back to Little Rock. And by doing that, though, he had given up control of northern Arkansas to the Federal Army, and so basically Hindman was personally blamed for losing northern Arkansas.
Yep.
They had an official court of inquiry. Thomas Hyman was literally kicked out of Arkansas for this.
Yes, I'm going to get to that in like his post-Civil War, what happens to him. Another thing I found about this battle too was that the Confederates, because they have to leave the battlefield, they had to leave many of their dead on the field, and they had to pile the bodies into heaps and surround them with makeshift barriers to keep feral pigs from eating the corpses. And the other thing that happened too is after this, because of the loss of northern Arkansas to the Union, Confederate forces are going to suffer from severe demoralization, and they lost many conscript soldiers during and after the campaign to desertion because of this.
I mean, Prairie Grove is a little battle by standards, by Gettysburg, Antietam, Vicksburg standards, but it's a bloody one. Like you said a little while ago, whether it's because Trans-Mississippi or because there was guys like James Blunt, who no one really heard of James Blunt. No one's probably heard of Thomas Hyman unless you're a Claiborne person or a Chickamauga person. Or, But I mean, it's a battle that really, what's important about this battle is it really gave the Union a foothold to northern Arkansas and allowed them to hold Missouri.
Yeah.
All that cattle and all that the beef and all the food up there, they were able to keep out of the Confederate hands because of this battle.
Yep.
So it's an important one. It really is.
Yeah. And just to wrap up the lives of some of the individuals we studied for Hindman, following the Civil War, Hindman settled in Mexico. And this is because he was under indictment from Union authorities in Arkansas for treason. And he, in true Thomas Hindman fashion, refuses to surrender. In Mexico, he's initially going to settle in Monterey. And he had trouble getting his law practice going. And he even learned to speak Spanish. He thought that might help him. And at one point, he travels to Mexico City to discuss with Emperor Maximilian I of Mexico the possibility of obtaining land for ex-Confederates. He ends up becoming friends with Maximilian and his wife. Hindman's fifth child is going to be born in Mexico. And they eventually moved to the Carlotta area where many ex-Confederates settled. Again, unable to establish a successful law practice this time because the residents are so poor. In 1866, Hyman is going to be part of a plan along with several ex-Confederates to establish a colony in the Yucatan Peninsula. This obviously ends up failing. And in the end, the Hymans return to the U.S. when Maximilian's reign begins to collapse. And by the end of April of 1867, they are settled back in Helena, Arkansas. And it's this time Hyman is going to request a pardon from President Johnson, which was denied. So Hyman resumes his legal practice, and he also re-entered politics and shockingly has a big mouth, and he speaks out against the radical Republicans. Hyman is so outspoken against he's very outspoken against the 1868 Arkansas Constitution and the candidacy of Republican Powell Clayton. So to try and silence him, the Republican leadership revived his 1865 treason indictment against him, and he's arrested on March 20th, 1868. And the charges excluded him from a July 1868 amnesty proclamation by President Johnson, which had pardoned all former Confederates. Hindman was not pardoned in that because of the treason indictment and because he'd been arrested. Now, he's able to remain free, but Johnson is like, no, you're not getting a pardon. He ends up joining a faction called the Young Democracy, and one of their claims was that the Republicans were only using Reconstruction for personal gain and that freed slaves should instead support the Democrats. Hyman actually ends up getting a following of, not shockingly, ex-Confederates, but also former slaves, which I found a little bit surprising. On the evening of September 27th, 1866, Thomas Hyman is sitting at home with his children when he is shot through the window. He was hit in the neck and jaw, which severed his windpipe, and he will die the next day. Before he passes away, however, he suggests that the shooting was politically motivated. Now, the assassin, although a couple people came out and were like, I did it, never been found because there was never any substantial proof that those people did it. It was almost like they were just being like, I shot Thomas Hyman, because at the time, it was a big deal that he was assassinated. I've also read somewhere that it was over some land dispute he was having with his neighbors as well. But either way, 1868, he is shot and killed, and he's buried in Helena, Arkansas. As for James Blunt, post-Civil War, Blunt and his family settled in Leavenworth, Kansas. He resumes his medical practice, and he's also admitted to the Kansas bar, and he practices law. And for a while, he practices law in Washington, D.C. Now, in 1873, he's accused by the Department of Justice of conspiracy against the government, as well as a group of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina. In 1879, his behavior becomes very erratic, and he ends up being committed to an asylum. It's not known what he died from, but the cause of his death was called softening of the brain. Whatever that means in today's terms, I'm not too sure. But he just all of a sudden, I think, went crazy and had to be committed to an asylum. So the two of these men, these kind of, very short-tempered individuals, one of them, Heinemann, being very short, literally, they don't exactly have a happy ending to their story.
No, they don't. And that's the thing, too, is, Blunt, again, James, Gilpatrick, Blunt, he isn't a household name. And I bet not even a lot of Civil War buffs have really even heard of him. But after Samuel Curtis, he probably had the best war record in the Trans-Mississippi overall. And his performance at Prairie Grove was absolutely outstanding. But a lot of these people, whatever happens after the war, whatever happened with his meningitis, or who knows what happened to him afterwards.
Yeah, something happened. Something happened to him.
He got something. But again, he was a very interesting guy. And you're right, before he was with Kansas, with
Bleeding Kansas,
with Brown, and those guys. And it's when you study these battles, you study these people, you get to kind of get in their heads a little bit and try to see what they're all about. And there's so many fascinating characters in this war. And Heinemann is certainly one, Blunt's certainly one, but there's a whole bunch of them. John Marmaduke's another one. He goes on to be Missouri governor.
And it is a great name, by the way. I googled it.
Oh, that's like you're paying attention. but I think what's interesting about Prairie Grove, though, is, like we said a little while ago, it keeps the Union in control of Missouri realistically. It keeps them in northern Arkansas.
Yeah.
And it denies. You want to talk about kicking yourself. You want to talk about having an opportunity for Heinemann to make a name for himself, destroy the Union Army, get into Missouri and get all those supplies. And he had it, but he just failed. He couldn't bear to fight. Whatever reason, he was all ready to go. It's like when you finally make it to the front door and you realize you forgot the key.
Yep.
That's kind of what happened with him.
And I sometimes wonder if, too, Heinemann is looking at what is happening in the Eastern Theater. And I know it's not called back then, but in the East with all these, you got the big name generals, you got the Stonewall, you got the Lee, you got the Longstreet. They're getting all this recognition. And it's even happening a little bit by this point in what is now considered the Western Theater of the war. You wonder if he wants to get his name out there as well.
He had the opportunity. He certainly did.
Because he seems like an individual who, as outspoken as he was, as involved in politics as he was, he's shunned from getting any kind of position in the Confederate government, which is really what he was going for, even after he campaigns on behalf of Jefferson Davis when he's running for governor, doesn't get the position in the Confederate government that I think he wants. And he's like, well, I'll try the military. I think he's looking for recognition. A big part of him is, because I think that's what he wanted, was this recognition. And he's seeing it happen in the newspapers with men like Lee.
Yeah, absolutely. I've not been to Prairie Grove in Arkansas. I've never been there before. But
there's a battlefield there. They've done preservation.
You can go to Prairie Grove as the battlefield. Fayetteville's not far away. University of Arkansas, a good college bar. There's a lot of places that you can go visit up there. But I think Prairie Grove is an interesting battle because it's one of those big what ifs for the Confederacy.
Yep.
There's been a lot of what ifs when you look at the Civil War in general. But this is one that I think if Heinemann had done what he could have done or should have done, he'd be a much bigger name.
Yes.
And they would have held that area. It could have changed a lot.
It would have made Vicksburg a lot more difficult. It would have made even, you look at something like Chickamauga a lot more difficult because of where they're having to move troops leading into the battles for Chattanooga as well. Like things like that would have been, I think, a lot more difficult for the Union Army.
Right. And so again, weather, communications, and terrain.
Yeah.
And really was all three of them. So
yep.
What's coming up for us next, Mary? What's coming up?
So next we are doing you can say it because I can't pronounce it. The
Potawatomi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Massacre of Potawatomi.
We are going to be talking about John Brown. We're going to be talking about the Potawatomi Massacre. We're going to talk about leading into bloody Kansas, about the end of the Missouri Compromise and the Kansas-Nebraska Act, how that plays in to really the other aspect of John Brown. Everybody thinks John Brown, you think of Harper's Ferry, you're thinking of Charlestown, you're thinking of all that stuff. But this is really when it's a lot more vicious, when it's a lot bloodier. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're going to have some fun talking about that. So that's coming up for us next. But we got some fun stuff coming outside of that, Mary.
We're going to be announcing a roundtable here soon. Yes, we are actually going to do it because we've had a couple of requests for one. If you are in Gettysburg this weekend being December 5th, 6th, and 7th, the Christmas Festival is happening. We will be over at the Heritage Center, dressed up in our Civil War dressed up in our uniforms for the day. So if you're in town, stop by and say hello. We are going to be doing our Facebook or YouTube live stream on Sunday, December 7th at 10 o'clock in the morning, which is the anniversary of Prairie Grove. We did not deliberately plan it that way. It just happened.
No, we're going to do that. I'm going to talk about that again. So if you're in Gettysburg and this is going to drop tonight, so you theoretically, I suppose you could hear this, I suppose. But come down, come see us. The whole town is all decked out for the Christmas stuff tomorrow,
Yep.
So check that out. We'll be doing a live on Sunday. We'll be doing a round table the next week or so. A lot of fun stuff coming in the pike. We'll be talking about John Brown and the boys here in a couple of weeks
Yep.
as well. So any final words from you, Mary?
I just want to say, with us doing John Brown and starting to get into those topics, they are, yes, they're not the Civil War, but they are important to the lead up of the Civil War and understanding what happened during the war.
Between me and you, Mary, there's no Civil War if there's no John Brown.
I would agree
I mean,
with that.
it probably would have come later, but
Yeah.
when you look at the impact of what he did going into Harper's Ferry and how that really turned the apple cart upside down with guys like Henry Wise and these
Yeah.
Virginia people, it's it may not have prevented it if he wasn't around, but he certainly expedited it.
Yeah.
and that was
Yep,
that
he's
seemed like it was his
he's a
plan.
huge figure, and however you feel about him, we're going to be talking about him. So, Darren, thank you to you for bringing it like you always do. Thank you to our listeners for supporting us for these last 159 episodes. We are now on to 160.
160. We're coming around the bend. So have a great weekend, everybody. Stay warm. My God, it's so cold.
I know.
Anyway, the winter has definitely arrived. So
We also have to get that draft in the window fixed.
Oh, yeah. That's a draft noise. Anyway. All right, guys. Have a great, safe night. Hopefully we'll see you this weekend. If not, we'll talk soon. Peace out.
See y'all later. Bye.